Joining me today is Judd Trayling. He is somebody who works in our same industry. I've known Judd for many years. He's become a good friend. We love bantering about technology and what's going on in the space. Judd has been writing software since he was 13 years old, and he's got at this point over 4 decades of experience with technology. And as time has gone on, he's just gotten more and more excited about solving hard problems. He runs a custom dev shop and among other things that they do. And what I love about this conversation is that he's not just observing from the sidelines. He is actively using these tools. He's in it every day with his developers, watching closely what works and what blows up. And as we get into the conversation, he gets into some things that I hadn't really considered before or hadn't heard elsewhere. One of his big observations is that for them, AI is actually moving the needle more on the smaller tasks than it is on the big tasks. We also talked about how AI is accelerating their sales cycle. And anyway, just a great conversation. Hope you enjoy it. And with that, we'll get on to our fireside chat with Judd Trayling. Joining me for another AI Fireside Chat, my good buddy, Judd Trayling in Florida. Judd has been in the space for a long time. He's a techie, he's a developer, and he's a good friend and always on the forefront with his stuff. So thanks for joining me, Judd.
Thank you for having me. I think this is fun. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we talk about a lot is hype versus reality. And I would love to just get your take on what are you seeing that you feel is hype and what are you seeing that you feel is real, that's adding tangible value?
So we have numerous developers, different individuals have been adopting the software and AI differently and at different rates. So we have a few folks that have adopted it fully and they are having great progress. And then we have others who their desire in life was to code and write code because it's very fulfilling. You can solve problems and you feel like you get through them. And our promotion to using AI more and more is because of the values that we do get out of those that are leveraging it pretty comprehensively. And that is better training documentation that comes out of it, better our own support documentation, better regression testing, really looking at the quality of the code across our entire Git ecosystem so that we're not duplicating functionality that someone else had written. So that cross team member support is escalated. I mean, it's vastly improved when we're using some of the AI tools, as opposed to people really just developing in their middle layer. That's where I think that it is delivering. It's delivering for us. And I can see it because we have a gap right now where we're trying to go through and uplift people so that they're all using the same kind of tools, or at least have better influences of how they're using it across the whole company so that we get all those benefits. I would say the hype is that it hasn't really sped up our development efforts, because when we see them, we're going, oh, well, now we can do this much more regression testing. So instead of testing sample sets, we do broader testing of the code across a far more reaching range of stress testing, boundary testing. How do we do all the edge testing and failure testing, things that you don't normally, it has really improved that. I mean, so we look at the project timelines and we think, well, it's is this really going to save us time? Probably the answer is, no on most of the projects, unless they're really small. When they're small, I mean, I did a sample of doing a data anomaly testing where I used to write for a period of time. I wrote about 6 or 7 different anomaly testings across data sets. And each one would take 2 to 4 days. Walked away from it for about 3 months, and other people were working on it. And I found an anomaly that I just wanted to implement. And I thought this would be a great use for AI. And instead of 2 to 4 days, it took me like between 3 and 4 hours. So in that small myopic case, it delivered like really, really well, because I didn't have to go to someone else. I didn't have to, pass the hand of code at all. I was just able to do it myself.
So that's an interesting observation. That's one I haven't heard before. So you're saying that it's not saving a lot of effort on the big tasks, but it is saving you more time on the smaller things.
And that could just be our organization, right? So we have, we're a small company, and it is definitely a diverse group of people with their experiences. I mean, and everybody is experienced. That's the other thing I've realized is we've been successful with it. People who have experience in development, and I'm seeing the range is when it's 10 to 15 years, I see adopting of the technology. When it's over 20 years of doing software development, it's a lot slower for that adoption, which makes sense.
I was actually going to ask, is there any correlation between age and those who are willing to adopt? And I was actually having a similar conversation a few weeks ago with a buddy who had made a very similar observation that the younger people are all over it. And the more senior people are like, I've been doing this my entire career. I don't want to change. And, I like having more control. But it seems like those, and I would say especially those with experience, it can really accelerate what they're able to output versus the old way of doing things.
It does. And I think they just have to shift their mind frame, right? So people think of, and I came this way. I mean, I've been writing software since I was 13, 14 years old, and I'm 52. It's a long time. I don't like to say the number of years. I'd rather say the range of age because it doesn't sound as bad. Working on a problem when you first start writing something, back in the legacy days of COBOL and Fortran and things of that nature, you really had to spend time understanding every little component. When you solved a problem that you couldn't get through or a bug, and you felt great. And it was usually around 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. And that was when you got to go home. And I still think people my generation or the folks that have spent, 20, 25 years development, they still like that interaction. They like getting down into the weeds. But to your point, and I agree with this, is that they have to change their mindset of, hey, I'm building this code or I'm doing this feature or function to I'm building an app, building a full featured thing. And I can have some agents going off and running and doing markdowns and start writing code. And I'm going to come through and put it all together. And at the end, I think you get the same feeling of I made an accomplishment. I completed some sort of work. If I can go out and dig a hole in my yard and plant a tree, at the end of it, I see my tree and I go, wow, I did that. It's going to grow now. And I think if you put it in that perspective, I'm solving a bigger thing. I'm not into the weeds of coding it. I don't have to be in the weeds. I just need to review it and make sure that it is going to scale, extend, and be supported. Then I'm good. And then it will make it faster. But then we also look at it as we're just trying to do more with it. How do you get the best solution that's scalable, have the most customer interaction? That's the other thing we're also finding is we're doing a lot more mock-ups. So we've gotten away from traditional specification documents or requirements documents, and even the wireframe models. I mean, we've been doing wireframes for, as long as I've been in IT, we've drawn up wireframes and ERD diagrams. And instead we've really leveraged Figma's Make tool to do the front ends. And we've even pushed that outside of actual assigned projects to upfront within sales. And we get a lot more iterations, more boundary understandings, more edge cases that pop out of it. So where we might say, oh, this is going to be a 200-hour project. By the time we get done with everything that we're trying to justify, it might be 500 hours. And our prospects are thrilled because then they know, oh, all these other little cases that we probably would have ran into during the projects and had change orders for custom apps, we know about it up front. So the clarity of what we can understand is also far better.
That's really interesting. And I hadn't thought about that. And so if I understood you right, you've got a customer that's actually happier knowing that the project is going to cost more because it has allowed you to iterate through the sales process, the design process in the sales cycle to get a more accurate picture.
Yes. And we used to do that with RAD tools. So RAD tools like Alpha Anywhere, and there's several of them, but we used Alpha Anywhere years ago. And it was basically just a VB code development tool where you could spin up a proof of concept with the actual pages and functionality behind it. And we could show that to customers and they go, oh yeah, that is what I want. And then we would have to take it though and write it within, for us, it was PHP. That was a hard leap. That was really expensive. And it was also still a very technical tool to work with. So me being a developer on the sales side, like, I can't give that to my sales guy to do a proof of concept. So we'd have to do a project that would be paid. And then from there, we would then have to go and build something else out with it. And that did save time, but it required less in that sales cycle and it shifted it back. But the concept for us has been around for a really long time of how fast can we build something up front. The negative to that was you had to be a developer ultimately to create that little proof of concept. It was faster, but it wasn't there. And that was actually how we did our first data warehouse, was using RAD tools. And we sold someone on our data warehouse and they said, that's awesome. Okay, great. Now we actually have to really build it.
Yeah. So that's a really, really interesting use case and one that I haven't heard before. And I love that. You Also being the owner of the business, you're not writing code all day. At least I don't think so. Outside of, your dev team and the sales process, where else are you guys using AI in the organization?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different areas. So if you think about it, in sales, in the dev cycle, in our data management area, we're using AI. We're using it to a certain extent in support. That's probably the least area. And when we're using it in IDEs, Cursor has been a really good tool for us. It's probably the most comprehensive. Then it goes to VS Code. I think a few people are using PHP Storm, but I think they're holdouts to using AI on the PHP Storm side. And in the database side, though, we use Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, Beaver, SQL Workbench, and Toad. None of those have really, at least we haven't run into it, where they're as integrated in with using AI to go against the data. So it's a little bit more clumsy for us. I think that could just be, where we're at in a maturity phase. Where we're not using AI is with customer data, right? So we are just now spinning up our own LLM and setting up our servers so that we can contain everything within our domain. But we've really blocked any way that our customers' data or any kind of information like that would ever go outside of our domain and then be processed or used and then brought back. We allow our customers to do it, but that's on their own accord and where they're looking at their information. But we don't use it in those spaces. Which,
when you say you're spinning up your own LLM, like you guys are actually writing your own
we're
model,
pulling it down, so you can download them, and they're open source, like Anthropic. So you can use the open source models. You drop it down. The learning process of it is going to be, not as good. What we've understood is, and within our specs, is it's going to take longer for it to process. But I know our data doesn't leave our servers, and it's a pretty good sized server that we had up having to set up for that. I'm just doing minimum, but.
What are your customers coming to you and asking you to do around AI? Or maybe I should start with the question, are your customers coming to you and asking you?
So it's funny you bring that up. I was thinking about that a while ago. Pre-COVID, we had companies that were doing AI, primarily around audit and audit focus within financials. And we tried selling it to our customers, went to all of them. We're like, here's what it would cost, no interest. We ended up saying it will be free. Can we just do free? Our cost for labor to implement it would be free. No takers. And for the years of pre-COVID up until the last, I want to say 12 months, no one really showed interest. Everyone was still focused on, tell me what I know, what I want to know, right? Give me the analytics. Give me these semantic models of data that I can analyze and look at with Power BI or Tableau or whatever tool it is. Show me what I can how I can understand the metrics that I need to know so that I can make good decisions and that are consistent. That all shifted about 12 months ago. We have customers in construction, in like every industry, where their leadership is telling them you have to use AI. So they're trying to use it in any automation that they can. So if they're pulling it out of Sage Intacct or any of their financial systems, how do they get it into pipelines to automate their work? And the most interesting thing that I heard was from accountants, if I can get 80% of it done, I'm good. Now, I'll worry about manual interactions, manual journal entries, whatever it might be after the fact, but I have to get more automated because management isn't letting us hire new people to be able to take on our growth. So it is absolutely being requested. And we're doing discovery calls with customers right now just to understand how they are using it. Are they using it in Excel? Are they looking at third-party tools that are pulling it out to do analytics, or the workflows? And the workflows seem to be the most complex because then they need to know APIs, or technical language, technical tools to be able to make updates to systems. And these are, for us, primarily accountants, where, if I went to school as an accountant, I would have never thought that I needed to become a programmer or IT architect.
So what you're describing, is it truly AI or is it really just old school automation?
I think it's old school automation where they're using AI to try and speed it up, right? So they don't know how to connect to an API before, but with AI, it will connect. We have a really good friend who's the head of IT for a company, and instead of buying SaaS apps, he's writing all these connections and creating the apps internal to that company, using AI to make the connections and send the data, from one place to the next and put it into their own warehouse and be able to do their reporting with it. And he's using Claude to make all those connections and make those flows. And he's saving money, at least at this point in time, on doing it himself. I don't know how that's going to be long term from a maintenance perspective and putting it on servers and doing upgrades, et cetera. But in the short term, he's able to get a lot done and do it so that it fits his business. But to your question, a lot of it is just how do I do the old school integrations using AI so I don't have to code it?
And so there's not an AI layer that's actually doing something to the data in flight or anything like that. It's just leveraging AI to build the integrations faster.
I would go along those lines. That's what we see today.
Yeah. I had a similar conversation several months back with a guy named Kevin Schuler, who we did one of these, and similar conversation. Is it AI or is it automation? And really, do you care? Like, does it actually matter? At the end of the day, we're all just looking for gains, and whether you attach an AI label to it or not, it doesn't really matter. Is it making your job more efficient?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And definitely the AI tag gets put on, I think, a lot of things that aren't really AI.
Yeah. So you've got this customer that's, I hate the term, but I'll use it anyway. They're vibe coding all this stuff. Do you see a world where these long-standing SaaS companies are severely impacted by people building their own apps?
I think it would be really hard to eliminate them, at least in the next 10, 20 years, right? Like long term, I have no idea what's going to happen. And I'll be honest, I'm hoping that I'm retired long before then. But in the short term, I don't know. I think that there's always the overreaction to no matter what happens. There's always an overreaction by people. And then it usually adjusts back to where it's actually going to be. So I think right now where people are trying to eliminate SaaS products or they're, looking at them negatively, that's an overreaction to what they can deliver. So if I have lots of SaaS applications and we use, tons of them within our business, we're not going to be super successful at recreating all the functionality out of it. I think it will be when you are barely using an application. You're just scratching the surface of it and you only need some core functionality and maybe you can replace that with your own product. Fine. But when you need something like a full-blown Salesforce and extensibility, you're not going to create that on your own. Or even we use PandaDocs. There's a lot to it. I'm not going to recreate that on my own, but I will create automations to it. I will create ways to pull data out and then automate it to go somewhere else. I don't see it really happening. And the other great thing is there's no, at least for developers, there's no USB-C plugin or the requirements for everything to run off of the same power cord. No one's still today in doing development, I guarantee no matter what system you go into, address or address related fields are going to be different types and links. And they're going to allow for different formatting and, other than maybe a phone number. I've even seen phone numbers where it's unformatted or formatted. The data is always going to go into these systems slightly different. They're going to allow special characters. They're going to, include international characters where somebody can go in and put in a bunch of junk in fields. And then the same thing with the APIs. APIs can all be built in 1,000 different ways where there's no look back periods. There's no date constraints. Maybe there's no filters within them, all those sorts of things that make it more challenging to do those integrations. So I can tell AI to go and do a connection to a system and pull my data out. But is it really going to know that, hey, they're doing hard deletes on the back end and it's not in an audit table for me to be able to pull, or that I need to go to an audit table to pull out what those deletes were so I can flush out what might be in my system? Or that the date ranges, maybe not everything has a when modified date. So now I have to go grab everything. Is AI really going to pick that up? And it will probably longer term, but I don't think anytime soon. I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, I don't think there is a right or wrong answer. I have a very similar take. That system of record, like a CRM or ERP, I just don't see that going away. And I've got a whole soapbox on CRM specifically, but where I do think, and I think this actually kind of ties to your point about the tools that you're just barely using. There are some things that are kind of ancillary types of applications that I do think that there is probably a limited time for those. I think something like a timekeeping app is probably something that, somebody might vibe code and replace Harvest or whatever they're using for timekeeping. I think project management is another one where, I don't think Asana is going away tomorrow, but I could see over time people saying, we've got some nuance to how we do our projects and I want to have a little bit more control over it. So some of those kinds of things I can definitely see diminishing over time?
Those are two really interesting examples because those are two of the systems, time and project, that we have tried to use many applications. I can't even tell you the number of project management solutions we've tried. I think all of them, from Jira to Asana to many, many different ones, right? And it was always there's some shortcoming that come to them because of the way that we do business. So that could be it. And I've never found a timekeeping system that I like. I'll be honest. We've tried hundreds of those, and developers are, I believe, in my experience, we're notorious for not being able to report our time. I mean, we are definitely not like lawyers. We're not like, we just can't grasp the value of putting down what we did into a timesheet, it seems like, to be able to keep that. So those might be good applications where someone could say, look, here's the simple solution that we need explicitly for our environment, and then you're good to go. But those are also two applications that require a lot of integrations, right? You need your employees, you need to know what they do, you need to know the rates. Like there's a lot of
project codes.
Yeah. When projects started,
the
billing. Yep. There's lots of integrations around both those sides of the products, which are struggling. So it then ties back. Maybe you build that niche, but then you still also have all the integrations too, which is hard within the applications when you buy them because timekeeping doesn't always flow to your financials. Project management isn't pulling out of your financials or pushing it back in. So it's, providing something that doesn't have problems itself.
When you look out at the players in the AI space, looking out, I don't know, 12, 24 months, who do you think are the winner? Who do you think are going to be the winners? And who do you think is going to fall by the wayside?
I mean, it's interesting. I just saw, what was it? Meta AI was kind of announced. And I mean, I didn't even think of them for AI or any of the tools. I don't know that, Anthropic is it right now. I mean, with Claude and Sonnet. I mean, it's just, it's the beast that really, really works well. We haven't seen a lot. We started out with Microsoft Chat GPT. Didn't really work with us. Yeah, Microsoft's whatever it is, Copilot. We disbanded on that one pretty quickly. But it doesn't mean that they're not going to come back. I mean, you have some companies, like, for me to say Microsoft isn't going to be a winner, I think I'd be crazy because they're the largest company out there really cranking this stuff out. They're going to make it win. OpenAI, that'll be interesting to see because I think that was still kind of coming around of, will it be a for-profit versus a nonprofit and all of its, interesting parts. I don't think we're going to have any one single winner right away. I mean, it's kind of like with the internet. You used to have tons of browsers and lots of competition. I think right now what's keeping it going is all that competition. Then it'll just be whether or not we get things from overseas. Will we start to get AIs from China that we can adopt or wherever? I don't know who will win. That's one where I wish I knew because maybe I'd buy their stock if it's available.
It is shocking to me. Microsoft has clearly, I know that they're building some stuff themselves, but really, the initial Copilot was really just a wrapper around ChatGPT. And now they've given you the ability to use Anthropic instead of OpenAI. And then you look at Apple, and if you look at the history of Apple has rarely been first to market. They've always perfected it, but it seems like Apple is so incredibly far behind. It sounds like they're going to be, rebuilding Siri around Gemini. And it amazes me how these mammoth companies have really kind of ceded that ground to other players.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess historically that's always the case, right? Especially in healthcare, where you become a huge pharmaceutical company. You don't necessarily go down the path of every drug, right? You're just going to buy those companies once they've proven themselves. So when you're Microsoft or Apple and you have hundreds of billions of dollars sitting in cash, let these other companies run at it and, maybe take on lots of debt or whatever it might be and then buy them in the end. I think the end winner is going to be one of the large companies. I mean, it's almost always been that way. It's going to be Google. It's going to be Apple. It's going to be Microsoft. I don't know that it's going to be Oracle, but it's going to be one of the large players that's out there. It's ultimately going to win through either their own development or just acquiring the technology that's out there.
I think Oracle wins in the AI space no matter what, just like they win in the SaaS space. Every time Salesforce takes on a new customer, Oracle wins because there's a giant Oracle database behind it. And, I don't know what all the underpinnings of these different models are, but I guarantee there's a lot of Oracle in there. And the data centers that Oracle is building that is going to, house a lot of this stuff. I think Oracle's going to be a huge winner in this no matter what.
Yeah. I don't agree with that, I guess. Yeah, it's fair.
Some of the players, the smaller players that I am a little bit concerned for are, anybody who's built a wrapper that is, leveraging these other models. So Replit, Lovable, Base 44, these vibe coding apps where you can go in and prompt your way to build an app and it stands up all the infrastructure and does all this stuff. How long before Anthropic and OpenAI, and for that matter Google, basically just say, hey, we're gonna give you that wrapper and you're just gonna consume our tokens just as if you were using Claude Code, or we'll go handle all that. The other ones that I'm a little bit concerned for are people that have made plugins. Like I came across an Excel plugin for financial modeling recently, and I just don't see how they could be that much better than Claude with the Excel plugin. And, maybe for a time they can pick up some market share, but I think eventually that's just going to get eaten up by the foundation model providers.
I think that's a pretty good point, primarily because, they have tools to be able to just take on that extra functionality. So you have to solve the problem that's at hand, the baseline, which is what they've done. And you're probably right. I think these companies that have started up with plugins and add-ons and kind of wrappers, it's because they made it easier to use, right? They have good marketing. They made it easier to use for someone to be able to plug into it. And that's a big win. But as those tools come around and just make it easier, then you're gonna go back to the larger. And the tokens part, I think, is the most important thing there. The sale of the tokens is what's going to bring these companies tons and tons of money, which it already is. We've seen it in our increase in price in tokens, and now we have come up with strategies to try and minimize and reduce our costs by using less expensive versus the more expensive for different tasks. And I don't see that going away. And those who can get as much charged on their platforms, that's where they're going to get the profit.
Yeah, for sure. Well, apart from the projects that you guys are doing for your customers, what's the coolest thing that you've done with AI?
There's a few things that are, it's not incredibly fanciful, I wouldn't say, but it was some of those block and tackling things. Like we've created a lot of things around data quality is what we've used the tool for. I built an app that really goes out and it'll scour through, a database to try and find like objects and make sure that you can compare them for data quality, saying this information is one, this information is another. How do I bridge these things and then communicate up to our administrative staff to go, oh, no, there's something wrong within a pipeline or something like that. Or an integration. That was a really interesting one. And that one, we're actually putting now a front end to it. So we've deployed it for a couple of customers on the back end. And now it's how do we deploy this on the front end so the customers can actually say, oh, I understand my data to a certain extent. Now, how do I start putting in these QA checks to stop downstream processing of things if it's wrong? That's one example. Another one was where we did the front end development. And we did the markdown and shared it and then had it plugged into Cursor coming out of Make. And instead of it taking, a week, it was really fast it was basically 2 days to build the whole front end. And it was just like what the customer saw. So we had no back and forth time on that. That was probably one of my other favorite ones. But there's lots of little things. Like, I don't think we've solved anything that was, monumental. Some of the data anomaly things, it sped it up, but we still have to have the ideas. Like, we don't have it coming up with ideas for us.
What, so on the flip side, what's something that you've worked on that's been just a total flop?
We have done, so I think this comes back to, and we definitely have a couple flops, custom development. So we do custom development for customers where they come up with application ideas and we're like, fine, we'll build it on our platform. The last mile, nothing else exists. So you can't buy it off the shelf. So we'll do those. And we have had certain developers really use 100% of AI to build those apps and then deploy them. And then when the customer comes back, they're like, this is great, except for, can we iterate through it? What's the next evolution of this product? And then we go, all right, so we apply the next evolution of requirements and we basically have to rebuild the entire code set. So then the testing goes back out and they go, well, this feature isn't what we touched. This wasn't what we asked to have, changed, but all these other things are now broke. And we go, oh my gosh. Okay. So coming back and then running the whole application through AI to, basically rebuild it from scratch and then putting it back out, we ended up with more issues. So I think the flops are where we rely on it wholly for building apps without someone who has the capacity to really baseline understand the code, QA it, make sure that it isn't doing a bunch of crazy things that no one can support, then implementing it and then thinking that we're never going to change it, because that is a problem. Then the change management behind it, customer expectations of, I just wanted this little thing fixed. But if you have to recompile the whole thing, it's not as good as what it used to be, because then you could have someone go in and make three changes to 3 lines of code or something like that. And then you never had to worry about everything else breaking. Whereas today, if you're not careful, then that's probably our biggest failure of it.
Getting from 0 to 1 is not all that difficult. And that's an overstatement, but people forget that software, you're never done. And once you get it built, you still have to maintain it. And whether maintain is, keeping up with security and making sure that you're plugging any holes, or it's those feature enhancements that come over time. And going back to this thing we talked about earlier of people just vibe coding these things, you can get V1 out really quick and easy. And thinking about your client who they're building all this stuff internally, what happens when that guy leaves?
Right.
And how do you A, keep that going, and B, protect yourself when the person that built it is no longer there?
That's the part that I think is we've overreacted. We've started taking on things that we probably shouldn't be overtaking, right? I think from an IT architecture perspective, I've had CFOs tell us, well, I'll just code that myself. I'll do the integration. I can use AI and I'll stand it up in a minute. I'm like, that's awesome. Call me when you'd like us to fix it. Generally, we're getting the calls back. How do you support it? How do they even know if they're pulling in good libraries or libraries that aren't expired or that are going to, be sunset in the next 3 months? And then the next thing you know, they're not supported, and maybe they have a whole, there's so many things still with software that make it unique, which is what developers love. It's like they get to creatively pull things in. I think when you look back again in history and you see huge ERP failures, and it's usually around the people, not the technology, but it's the people not knowing how to use the technology, how to manage the requirements, how to explain what they want to do. It's going to be this as well, right? So it's going to be the people who are trying to do more than what it is. They're not going to communicate well, and they're going to create messes. And now it's just that you can create a mess really fast with someone who's never gone, to school to be an IT, professional, not developers. They don't have computer science degrees. They're accountants and CFOs who, honestly, I'm amazed at their technical capabilities at this point. But they don't have that experience to think through, I think, all of the ramifications of trying to do it themselves. Just like I don't want to be an accountant. I'm not, I don't do my taxes at the end of the year because I think Claude can do my taxes for me.
Yeah, 100%. Give it time. Well, I think that's a good spot to end. Judd, I really appreciate it. You've given me a few things to think about. I need to go talk to our salespeople and figure out how we can adapt to the way you guys are doing things. That's great.
Likewise. I really appreciate it. It was good talking to you. It's always good talking to you, Scott.
Yeah, likewise.
Thanks.